Thank you very much, Matthias. Great presentation. And the last one for today and for the conference is going to be, again, virtual. Goh from BNP Paribas is joining us on screen.
Are you there?
Hello, Goh. Can you hear us?
Go.
So I think Michael is there, right? So while we're waiting for Goh to join, I can maybe give a quick intro. I think it's going to be a very nice talk about one important aspect of voice CX that we have, I think, not talked so much yet about, and so it's very nice to have that at the end of the conference. The missing link, which is about emotions, how a system can be empathetic, for example. I think that's something Goh is going to talk about. So I'm really looking forward to this talk. Yet now I hear something.
Are you there?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear us? At least we heard something.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, hello.
Can you hear us, Goh? Yeah. So that then in 15 minutes he will then start. All right. Yeah. So then we said until we fix the technical problems, we will quickly do actually the wrap up of today and of the conference, because we said, like, later on we have still the roundtables, but to have like everybody still like together now, maybe it's a good point now to quickly do a summary of the 2 days. So I would again, as yesterday, invite my 2 co-hosts, Frank and I'm not sure if Eamon is actually in the room. I think he was sitting here, but we'll maybe wait for him.
Hello. Sorry, I could hear you guys talking.
Okay, now we can hear you too.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect. Then let's go ahead with the presentation. I think that's perfect. Then
go ahead.
Goh.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Okay.
Perfectly working. So you can just go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, okay. So I guess we're a little bit early on time. Can I start the presentation?
Go ahead.
Right
Yes.
Now?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So my name is Goh Hirose, and I am an artist, entrepreneur, and I also am a business consultant for sometimes financial firms, also energy companies. I do a lot of things. This is a simple picture kind of to show my eclectic background. Obviously, I have a background also doing a lot of music. I think something interesting for everybody to know is that there's a lot of collaborative projects that I've done that spans across different genres. So it could be either music, painting, art. Recently, our team of artists, we have a team that we call Collaboration, and we came together to do an event. This was before the pandemic got so horrible, but it was in the US, and we're promoting the Olympics in Japan. And we did an event where we had interactive video, and basically the music that we were playing live, engaging with the audience could interact, giving reactions through the video that we're generating. The kind of background that I have, I think I grew up in the United States and also in Germany. I'm ethnically Japanese. Because of my background also, the way that I probably engage with a lot of the different cultures is a little bit unique, I would say. I don't fit very well into boxes. I think I'm a type of person that I like to introduce myself, and I think many people may resonate with me. We are kind of the in-between. We're in between these different worlds. And if you look closely in these kind of areas, there's this blurry area. This is the place where two different genres of things merge. And I find that this is also the place where a lot of innovation and interesting things also happen. And when we talk about this idea of AI, and I would say some people may call this the area of analytics and data analytics, I think there's this concept of like man versus machine. And coming from a perspective of somebody who's always been a creator and also been doing a lot of stuff in digital, I really don't think that this is the scenario, although we like to paint it like this in popular media. I think, there's another angle that you can take on this that you may commonly see a lot in also Japanese animation and Japanese kind of shows where artificial intelligence, these are actually robots that are shown here with AI, it can be depicted in a different way. I really think it's the intent of the designer and how you can take these technologies in a certain direction. And I also think this is the same in the way that we build businesses and different capabilities that we give to our businesses. So when I work with entities and talk about how we're going to do something or whether something is good or bad, I really think it's about the intent and how you build something that can really drive things. And one of the things that I see recently in this trend of new technologies is really about our focus going back to what really makes us human, and how do we learn things for the first time, how do we engage with each other, and also the fact that unlike a lot of machines who are maybe not self-aware of their kind of termination or their end, humans are very aware of their mortality, especially as they get older. And I think within that framework, within the framework of our bodies, the physical engagement, we have a very interesting context for us to exist. And I think machine, I would say, is advancing, or you could say AI. I'm not a big fan of the word AI, by the way, just so you know. It's artificial intelligence, and I think in a way it's going to become intelligence. We're still, I would say, in the path to get there. But I think as we develop more sensors to become more like humans, like you see in this picture, interacting, aging, maybe self-aware of your own body, these aspects will change. And this is going to be a little bit of what I talk about when I talk about, if you saw the title that I'm mentioning, this missing link, which is, I think, the next phase of how we use these technologies in service automation, for example, in voice service automation, for example. And machines do things particularly well, for example. It's not like something to compare, I think, with humans, although we naturally may do it. For example, repetitive things or things that require immense force or something like this, these are things that we are not good at, or maybe very detailed things. On the lower right, you see a diagram of making microchips. Obviously, these things can't be done by hand. And I think there's this balance between man and machine, or how they come together to do some things that are amazing. I'm a fan of MotoGP. Valentino Rossi, if you know this racer, he's retiring this year. Been a big fan of him for a long time. And it's really interesting to see over the years how the machine has been changing, how the person adapts to that, how this sport changes because of the way man and machine kind of interact. And I'm saying just man in a very broad sense. Obviously, this means humanity. And I think there's different aspects that we can see how these two things can merge and do some things that are very beautiful. And I think these are the things that we need to look at as we also look at things around things like service automation. So right now, in a lot of the companies that I engage with, a lot of times there's issues around customer satisfaction, or maybe people may broadly say in customer experience. And also, as we try and automate things and make things simpler, personalization becomes a big challenge. This is why a lot of times there are services that say, oh, we have real people engaging with our customers. And it seems almost like if you automate, you won't be able to have this kind of capability. And also a lot of transformation, because it uses technology to automate. They're slowly, you're creating a gap between what the human organization is doing, or what the organizational setup is meant to do, versus what the technology is doing. And it could be a kind of this game of cat and mouse between these two, I would say, contradicting forces many times. And then again, cost effectiveness. Sometimes there's technologies that can promise to do a lot of things, but they may be very, very expensive in terms of making it ready to use at a production level. And a lot of times when we automate things, people feel that the service becomes cold. You can imagine that when you try and get customer service on software as a solution type platforms, many times it's really hard to reach a real person. And always you get these automated responses. So they may be bringing a lot of efficiency, cost effectiveness, but the loss of human touch could be lowering of customer experience. Now, I think that artificial intelligence or these kind of more advanced automation can bring really new things to the table. And what I really think is about conversational AI. And this is where you would use not just these exchanges that are conversational, but even using voice. So there are projects that I've done where we try and replace like a chatbot with voice. And we realize that, from a technology layer, you might just be adding some conversion to voice or voice to text kind of capabilities. But in reality, that new interface of voice really changes the dynamic of the experience and also the data that we capture. Now, this is I think the biggest difference is the data that we can capture through being able to hear the customer's voice. So here are, just the 3 points that I think is really changing the game. It's more awareness of being able to understand the context of the customer. Like, for example, before, if we had a web page, customer service page, and they would click through different menus, sure, you could track them. But being able to hear them, for example, if it's a voice channel, you can see maybe whether they're stressed or not, and you could be able to understand whether they're upset or maybe confusion they may have, which through a button selection you wouldn't be able to tell what they're misunderstanding, for example. Obviously, you can capture this with chat as well. And then when you have services behind this kind of interface, automating things, you'd be able to do more advanced automation of this triage of decisions. And I think the ultimate point is the point 3, and I want to get a little bit deeper into this, is how can we be more empathetic in this area? And this goes back to that original topic I talked about of this automation or this machine and bringing it closer to the person so that it can do very majestic things that couldn't be considered before. So I want to show a short clip of kind of this automated service. This is a company in New York. They're a startup. They're creating some kind of a health score capability service, and they provide coaching services. And because they're a small company, they have to automate everything. And this is an example of automation. And I just want you to hear it and see how you feel about it. You're going to hear the voice as well.
Here are some tips to help you improve your health score. Manage your stress. Try and get adequate sleep, around 6 to 8 hours every night. Make plant-based meals a bigger part of your diet and keep yourself hydrated.
So this was done on purpose. I'm sure you can tell the different gaps that you have. And also the graphic itself. I mean, if you look at a still photo, this looks like a real person. I think it's modeled around a real person, but the movement of the mouth, obviously it's not matching the sound. Even the audio is snippets of clips, so samples put together. And you can quickly generate video like this, but I'm pretty sure that most of you who saw this thought, wow, this is a little bit weird. And this is, I guess, one of the things that we have as a risk when we try and automate or when we try and simulate things that are human. There are certain people that say the closer it is to kind of being a human, but the weirder it feels, the strangeness that you get, the bizarre feeling that when you can't tell if it's real or not, but it feels out of place. For example, one of the things you might have noticed first was the lips and the timing being out of sync. Maybe also the tone. And if this was someone that was interacting with you to do service, sometimes you might feel that you've been sent to kind of a robot, some degraded service of a human service. So I think it's very important to go back to the fundamentals of this automation and really understand what are we trying to achieve. So here are some points that are common that I see in a lot of projects that have to do with customer service automation. Either you're getting efficiency, maybe you want to increase this kind of experience by supplementing services where there are no humans to do this kind of service. What's common is after-hour automated services. So maybe if you want to call a call center with an emergency at 11 o'clock, maybe first you get some kind of automated answer. And another channel is when you try and automate things, because of this digital experience, you're able to log a lot more data. And obviously, things around voice, you have a lot of richness of data because you get to capture more things around the person's emotion. So a lot of times when we talk about service automation, I think there's this discussion of maybe we need to try and compare and we're going to lose something. It's always this kind of cost versus quality. I kind of deleted the word efficiency and quality because I don't really think that's the case. If you spend a lot of money on really refining the capabilities, you could get that efficiency, you can get the quality also at the same time. It's just a matter of how much you're willing to invest in it and what areas do you really want to invest in it. And I think when you have a goal, for example, your customer automation goal, it depends on the industry that you're in. I happen to work a lot for the finance industry. And in those areas, if you're dealing with your customers' money, maybe their life investments, maybe their home mortgage loans, this is something that's very sensitive. And so you don't want to handle it in the same way that you might handle returns for some Amazon purchase that's around €100 or something like this. So understanding this quality and being able to kind of quantify it is going to be very important. This is why I have these questions here that I think are very important to ask when you work on these projects, which is what is quality for you and how is it being measured? And a lot of times I see this number called the Net Promoter Score. I'm not going to explain it, but I think you're very familiar with it. You have 100 or minus 100. Basically, you're asking, would you promote this company to your family and friends? Basically, would you be very ecstatic about this company? And I think that there are more numbers than the standard numbers that we need to look at. So if you're not familiar with them, for call centers, I've often seen things around the first call resolution rate, resolution time, customer effort scores, satisfaction scores, and obviously the NPS that I just mentioned. I think the next stage that we should be trying to approach as we're trying to automate more things is to look at how can we get closer to the emotions around the customer interaction. Now, I think in a lot of modern books and I think seminars that talk about product design and customer experience, a lot of people talk about emotion. And I think it's very important that this is becoming more commonplace. In some of the projects I've worked on, we also bring the subject of finance and emotion much closer together. Maybe if you're familiar with this area or if you've worked with financial firms before, analyzing customer emotion is not something that is like first on the list. So I think that the subject of emotion, while it seems like, okay, let's start measuring emotion, it's not so simple, right? It's something that people want to get to, but it's rather difficult. And one of the books that I've read that was very inspiring for me was by Lisa Feldman Barrett. I have no connection with her other than reading her book. I'm not endorsed by her or anything, but I thought it was a very interesting read, and I thought I would introduce you to this. So this book is called How Emotions Are Made, and I think we are, most of you who may have some kind of psychology background may be aware that it's very hard to determine exactly what emotion is. And her basic theory is that, we don't have just one specific emotion. It's kind of like an experience that we have, both the combination of something mental and physiological, and we kind of construct these things. So this last sentence, your brain constructs instances of emotion, I think is very key. And from a business perspective, what this means is that we shouldn't be trying to determine, oh, this is happiness, oh, this is sadness, and trying to make business decisions out of this, but we should be aware of the ambiguity of this emotional data that we're trying to capture and try and make informed data-driven decisions, even though we may not know the nature of that emotion. Now, one example in a startup that I really like that I want to introduce to you is a Japanese startup called Empath. And what they do is they take voice analysis. So they take the audio and they analyze the audio and they use it to coach call center staff. So one of the companies, which is a very big telecommunications company in Japan, NTT, they've done tests using this, and I think if it's still live, it should be in production in their call centers. And what they do is they they look at things like, if you look at the data here, it's the pacing of somebody, the intonation, whether there's a lot of interruption or less interruption, and these emotional trends. Now, what they're trying to do here is, as they quantify things, they can cluster certain types of patterns of the data. And there's an outcome that they want. And what they're measuring, for example, is the customer is satisfied, or the customer has less complaints, or the calls end quickly. And whatever that goal is that for the company is quality, they tie that goal to the different patterns of data that you would get. And obviously on these new, more digital channels, there's more capabilities to analyze this data. So there's more clusters of, for example, pacing or intonation that you can create. Some interesting things you see: increase in customer's tone. This is kind of a display of emotion, but you're not saying this is good or this is bad. You're looking at the pattern and matching it to the result. And that's how this their solution is called Beluga Box, is used to coach their staff to get the results that they want. So for example, if these high performers, it says that they have a certain pacing. This doesn't mean fast or slow. This is a certain rhythm that they're looking for. They would get the other performers to match that kind of rhythm, or match the kind of intonation they would have in their voice. And I think this is a very important part of the difficulty of emotion, because it's so important, and we know how important it is, but we can't say, oh, happiness is good or joy is good, sadness is bad, but rather to be able to see that emotion is an important context and something positive we want to deliver. But because we can't judge it, we'd have to look at the data patterns. So enough stuff about emotion. I think I want to go into a little bit more talking about actionable things. And I wanted to touch on this idea of customer experience. Again, this is not some model I came up with. I've referenced where I got this on the bottom right here. But the idea of what I've blocked out here, which is the perceived service, I think when designing these kind of services, not only the attention to emotion, but really the positioning for the customer is going to be really important, especially when you automate services that are sensitive. For example, if you have claims made by a customer who just had a death in the family and they want to get their claims payout, there's a certain expectation they may have for the service, whether it's through word of mouth or past experience, knowledge of, for example, the insurance industry, or let's say the hotel industry, depends on what the service is positioned. But there's something that management in their new service automation plans that they've envisioned, and they're delivering to their team of service architects who are going to build the solution. And then the call center, for example, who's delivering that service, assisted by some kind of AI voice bot, for example. And then the customer coming to this. And the actual service that they get is not really what they are going to value. It's how they perceive that service, which is very influenced by the original data that they have that brings in expectation. For example, the expectation you may have for the Four Seasons Hotel is going to be very different from the expectations you'd have at McDonald's. And this is built through brand, marketing, PR, and also past existing services. And why I bring this up is because a lot of AI services or voice bots or these new services that we're bringing into the business area are not common for a lot of customers. And I think beyond that challenge, the technical challenge we have of delivering a service through, for example, voice, you have this kind of customer experience expectation barrier that you also have to overcome. We just did an experiment in Japan for a new product that we're trying to launch, and we did kind of mock-up test. And we had a certain interface that says talk to an AI bot, versus we would say talk to service automation. And a lot of people, they saw this AI bot. People only clicked it because they were curious. People who are actually looking for help would click on the other button. They would both lead to the same thing. So it goes to show that this perception of these new services can also become a barrier for you. And I think as people who are on the forefront of building these services need to be aware of these kind of barriers. So in summary, I want to talk a little bit about what's next and what we should do. So I think it's very important to look at your projects, look at maybe even your company, and think about what are these customer experience service gaps that you would have. The last one I just mentioned was the gap between that expectation or understanding of what that expectation may be. And also what's very important, and I think something that's missing a lot today, is to have the experiences firsthand. And obviously being able to do MVPs, test to learn, this is great. But I see a lot of companies outsourcing their customer research to marketing companies or agencies, and they go out and do the research and listen to the customer voice, and you end up just reading a PowerPoint. I really think that even around your family, you can engage them. And this is a little bit silly, but I always have my family members use different services or services of clients that I might be working with to really get that hands-on feel. I really like going out into the field and learning these firsthand insights. And another thing that I touched on in the very beginning is to really design with that intent, to design for emotions. What kind of emotional experience are you building for? Who are you building for? And that combination of different things that you build coming together, to like that idea of machine and people coming together to deliver that final service. How does that develop? And obviously, we're not at the point of being able to actually accurately measure emotions, despite what people might tell you from micro expressions, whatever. It's not really a science today. But the data around pacing for voice, for example, is something that you can quantify. So we should build upon data that's actually actionable. Now, another thing is share the emotional experiences with your team. One of the things I strive for in my business life is really to bring more happiness to different people. Happiness has been a very important theme for me. And again, much like emotion, I don't know really what it is, but I think there are moments that I do feel happiness, and I'd like more people in the world to feel that. And I think sharing these experiences that made you happy or gave you some excitement or whatever, these emotional experiences, sharing with your team, this gives them insight to build upon, making these small decisions they make day to day that finally delivers the customer experience. I think internally, the employee experience is kind of a mirror to what the customer is going to get, and building that out, getting that knowledge within your team is going to be key. And so the final, I guess, point I want to leave is that, this area of voice automated services, maybe even around AI, using emotions in our business, this is new. So I really am excited to explore. I hope to engage and meet new people because of this session, and I'm looking forward to having a next session, hopefully again. So thank you very much for the talk. That was kind of my quick pitch, but thank you.
Thank you, Go. Great. Great presentation. I can just say, like what you said at the very end, let's go out, let's talk about what we're excited about. I think your presentation really was a great example. You had like a small picture, on top of the screen, what you can do with an engaging voice. I think you really captured the whole audience. It was a really great talk. Thank you very much. If we have some questions also from the audience, we can still take some. We have a little bit time. If not, then let me just finish off with this remark. I think it was really great to look also into this part of, you looked at it from a design perspective. I really liked how you in the beginning put these two things together. We shouldn't look at it as machine versus human, but how can we bring it in the best way together? I think that was really a great closing of the conference, and we do have a question now, I think so. I will get that question for you.
Great.
Thank you for your presentation. I really agree about how we need to bring emotions more into the table. And I wonder if you could share any use case with us about this.
Okay. So maybe the use case that's the closest was the one with this beluga box example. So I wouldn't say that it's taking emotion and analyzing it, but I think that people are starting to understand that things that are represented inside emotion, for example, when you get angry, your voice might get louder. Or if you're feeling pain, for example, right, you might have a certain intonation of your voice. Questions, you'd have a quizzical end of the sentence. These things can be represented in the data, and I think being aware of emotion or different traits of emotion. Maybe you've seen, for example, the emotion wheel before. There's different emotions that have been identified. Not to say they're the only emotions that exist or they're very singular. They could exist at the same time, but they would have different representations based on the different cultures. For example, I would say in Japan, people are rather subtle in the way that they express the emotion, but there's some data that you can capture if you can record it. So being attentive to this experience and how emotions can be represented in a person. There's other companies that I didn't talk about that also do things with the face. And although I don't really believe in micro expressions being a one-to-one match with an actual emotion, they are a point of data that you can capture. And maybe you can find patterns of correlating, for example, facial expressions with the voice, with maybe the context of the words that you're using data mining, and correlating these different points and trying to target a certain type of emotional experience. So you'd have to be creative, I think, to try and tie it to emotion. But I think this is, in a way, capturing it. I think the whole point, just so that there's no misunderstanding, is that we're not there yet in being able to use emotion and designing something specifically to build a particular emotion. It's not going to happen. But we're at a point where we can record the data and we can look at patterns, and you might be able to use machine learning algorithms, basically deep learning, to create success patterns, as long as you can identify them as well in a quantitative way. So I hope that didn't disappoint you, but we're starting to enter this area of emotions, and knowing that emotions can trigger certain types of quantifiable features that you can use to cluster patterns of data and design algorithms that will give you the results that you want.
Perfect. Thank you very much. One more question for you, Goh?
Sure.
Goh, thank you very much for your presentation. I think it's a little bit more complex. So empathy is not only the way you tell something or the voice that you're hearing, it's also the what you're telling. And I think from a brand perspective, it's also important the what you're telling, and that you have a more personalized experience also with the brand, not only the voice behind it.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I started correlating the different things that would build an experience, but also I think for that topic, I think really this diagram, if you Google, I think the customer experience gaps or customer service gaps, you should get a similar diagram by these people written on the bottom here. And this talks about also this brand, like this brand part would be this marketing and PR part, right? And I mentioned brands like the Four Seasons or maybe Ferrari. These are famous brands that people know. There's certain expectation for that as well. So I think in a really global scale, not just designing that one service channel of let's say a call center or some kind of web page, really what you communicate through your communications team and that history that brand has really impacts the customer experience in the end. So yes, brand is important. And in a way, everything is important. And ideally, your company can work like an orchestra and work together. Unfortunately, it's really difficult across different countries, different silos. And this is something that I think is going to be something that's a challenge as more services and more data is interconnected. It's a great point.
Perfect. I think we have to go to the roundtables. Although we would have even more questions, but I think it's a really, I think we all love to stay in touch. I will definitely contact you again. It was a really great presentation. Thank you very much, Goh.
Thank you very much.
And have a great rest of the day.
Thank you very much. See you again soon. Thank you.